What does it mean to you to be fluent in a language you're learning?
I think it's different. It depends on what's your goal or what's your approach, I would say.
But do you feel weird switching back to speaking Spanish all the time whenever you're back in Costa Rica? On this video, I had the great opportunity of interviewing a very good old friend of mine. He's from Costa Rica, so he speaks Spanish, he speaks English as well, Chinese, and he speaks French as well. So in here, we're going to be talking about what motivates him to learn languages, and if he has any tips he could share with the rest of us. Hope you enjoy. Let's watch.
Hello, everyone. My name is Iwen. I'm an operations manager working for ITE as a content operations specialist. I'm 30 years old. I'm from Costa Rica, and we're here to speak about languages. So, yeah, let's start.
Cool. Good. Super professional. Okay, so Iwen, thank you for being here. This is the very first attempt at a wannabe interview for language learning. Like I said before, the point of what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to share the story of people like us who learn languages with other people who learn languages. One of the key motivations for me to do this is everyone has a different idea of what it means to be fluent in a language that they're trying to learn. So that would be my first question. What does it mean to you to be fluent in a language you're learning?
All right. Well, first of all, more than happy to be here with my old friend from China. And yeah, for sure, let's talk about languages. I will say right now, I'm fluent in English, Chinese, and I'm a native in Spanish. Besides that, I'm learning French right now. So I would say like in B1 level. But yeah, about fluency and what it means to be fluent, I think it's different. It depends on what's your goal or what's your approach, I would say. For example, for me right now, I will say that I'm fluent in Chinese when it comes to talk about daily stuff and daily life. But I still have some trouble communicating in a more professional way sometimes with my coworkers because the Chinese that we use in our daily work is more technical, right? There's a lot of words for metrics, for corporate business things, and I could easily say that I'm fluent in Chinese, but
It depends.
it depends for what occasions. Yeah. In Spanish, where I'm a native, so yeah, of course. Although I will say that sometimes because our native language it's spoken in a lot of countries, sometimes you also have issues with it. And if you want to go further, it depends also with which generation you're talking to, because right now like the new generations are coming with new things, expressions, words, and it's just the way it is. It's just the way it naturally comes. So yeah, that's Spanish. English, in the other hand, well, in my experience, I've been learning English since I was a kid. Don't like to say that I'm native in English because I'm not, but it's a language that has been next to me my whole life, if I could say. I've been learning since kindergarten. For example, in my country, parents used to say like, "Oh, we have to put our kids to learn English because it's the future." So we've been learning the language since like kindergarten. So yeah, I'm quite fluent in English. I can do business in English, but still it depends who you're talking to. Yeah.
Right. That's very interesting because yeah, I agree. I think being fluent depends on so many things. It's a very, maybe it's an annoying answer when people ask, "Are you fluent in this language?" And the answer is, it depends. It's not a very black and white, but that's the point. It's not a black and white answer because it does depend. You were talking about your work in Chinese and how you feel about your work abilities or communication skills in Chinese. So for people to understand a little bit, obviously I know this about you, but your work is in Chinese. Where are you, and why is your work in Chinese, and how much of it is in Chinese?
It does involve Chinese, but it's not fully in Chinese. Our company is from China. iQIYI is a streaming platform. We basically have like dramas, TV shows, movies, and documentals, variety shows, stuff like that. So it's a mix, actually, because our office, I'm working for the North American office, which is in charge of the Spanish region, which I do overview. So yeah, it's a mix of English, Chinese, and Spanish. What's the distribution? I will say with my coworkers and the people that I work daily, we usually speak a lot of Chinese to communicate, to go back and forth and discuss about things we have to do. Because we are in Canada, we also do speak a lot of English when we have to do deals or meetings with other companies. Sometimes we do speak English. Also, because I just said that I'm not fully fluent in business Chinese, I also support myself using or speaking English. Yeah. And also, because I'm overviewing the Spanish region, I do a lot of translation. I do a lot of scheduling, and I have to be really aware of the market. So I also research in Spanish a lot. So yeah, that's the Spanish part of my job.
Okay, so that's a very interesting, maybe even lucky position to find yourself in. You're working in Chinese a lot, not all of it, but a lot of it. You're working with English because of where you're at, and because you work related to the Spanish speaking region, all of Latin America, I'm assuming you have to use Spanish as well. So that's really good. A good way to keep up languages, so you don't have to worry about losing them, I'm guessing.
We try. It's kind of hard to keep up with all of them. I think we can talk about that later, but yeah, like keeping up with languages, it's a whole thing. You really have to be on it. Yeah, yeah. For example, right now that I'm learning French, I have to do at least 2, 3 lessons every day. If I switch to every other day, I feel the difference, for example. Yeah, well, there's a stage in learning languages, I would say, that you have to like push really hard to get or accumulate a bunch of knowledge that is gonna be your baseline when you're using the language. I would say after you learn that baseline, I think you are more free to go in a different pace, right?
Yeah, I think definitely it's a matter of, there are like stages or plateaus where you get past that level, then you can be comfortable for some time. You don't have to stress as much. You can relax a little bit. Then you get going again. But then again, for that part, you can't waste time. You can't lose time. You can't let it go back until you get to the next level. It's like playing, what's that called? Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? It's like playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. You have to get past certain levels so that you can get to the safety zone.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way of putting it. And yeah, we will talk more about that.
You have to reach each level, but you also have to keep up with each of the levels, because if you reach a level and then you leave it for a really long time, then you probably will go back to the previous level, right?
Yeah, you fall back down to unlike in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you do fall. Okay, and I want to come back to a few things, but you said that French. Can you tell me about that? Why are you learning French? How did you start learning French? And the same with Chinese. Why did you start learning Chinese? Because I feel like English is very self-explanatory, and you already said in Costa Rica we learn English since we're very little because, well, we have to. and we're told by our parents you have to learn English for your future, for your career, for your job. But what about Chinese, and what about French? Why did you choose to learn these two? And also, which of the Chinese languages is it that you speak? Because again, this is something I know because I know you, but I would like you to talk about it.
Why did I decide to learn Chinese in the first place? Because I'm half Chinese. So, well, I was born and I grew up in Costa Rica, so I wasn't really exposed to the language. So when I was like in my 20s, I decided to move to China and pursue this path of learning Chinese. So that's basically it. That's why I learned Chinese. French, in the other hand, it was something that came to me without any particular reason. But when I was in China and I started meeting people from Africa, they were like, "Ça va? Ça va bien? Ça va et toi?" And I don't know, I just like it. And I started getting like interest in it. Yeah, that's how it started. But I didn't learn
Okay.
French from that time. Then the time passed by, and after many years, when I was in Costa Rica doing my major in operations, I wanted to, you know, you can tell me, but when you speak three languages, there is always this feeling that you want to go to the fourth one.
Yeah, it's like, can I? Should I?
Yeah, that's the thing always when you're learning languages. So there was this opportunity to go to Montreal or Montreal in Canada, and I thought that it was the perfect opportunity to do it. So I started learning French by myself. This is the only language that I have learned by myself, or I have taught myself. So to go with it, I start with Duolingo, and I have no shame saying that because I think that Duolingo rocks. And if you're consistent with Duolingo, Duolingo can gives you that baseline that I just said before. Yeah.
Agreed. 100%
There are
agree.
other ways, of course. There are other ways that we can speak about, but that's a way that I think is easy, on hands, and free.
Yeah, yeah. That's definitely it's a very interesting point because I've always been more of the with Duolingo. I guess because my students usually come to me to practice Spanish or to learn Spanish, and they've already been doing Duolingo for a while, and they believe in it a lot, but they're a bit stuck with other parts of their language journey or even with English. I always tell them you need to start experimenting with other things. But it always seemed to me like, yeah, it was obvious that Duolingo is very good to give you those bases. Like, I agree completely. It gives you the base, and it gives you consistency, which is like, the first ingredient.
Really important. I would say that Duolingo is perfect if you want to be consistent. That's a really handy tool when you want to be consistent, because you have always your phone in your hand and you can always do a lesson.
Yeah.
And leave it or not to the people who are listening. I think you already know it, but being consistent is a key. You can learn a language faster if you practice at least every day, at least a little bit. So yeah, Duolingo is pretty good, but I was gonna say that after a while, you need to jump into another stage. Like we just said, it's like stage by stage. After Duolingo, if you have the budget, go to a formal class if you want. And if you don't, or if you are not interested, or if you wanna get into the journey of language, learning a language by yourself, you can start doing a few things that I recommend and that I have used before. There's this technique that people learn 1,000 words, 1,000 daily words, for example.
1,000 daily.
Yeah. So that's another way. I think it's pretty handy. If that works for you, That's perfect. But you can try it. I mean, the thing is that you won't learn really awkward and different and useless words. You go for the words. You have to think about what are the words that I use daily.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For example, in English, verbs like walk, sit, or to sit, to walk, to run, like words that you actually use. I'm just giving random examples. Then you go to pronouns or adverbs and everything. What I'm trying to say is that you need to learn the words that you actually use in your own language. You need to try to understand what of these words I'm using every day. Because as per my understanding, I don't have the exact number, but you use just a few words daily in your language, in your mother or your native language.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the important words that you need to learn in other languages. Because once you learn these words, you will start being fluent, or you will start being able to put sentences together, which is really important. That's one of the hardest things for people to achieve when they're learning languages. Go from saying words to saying sentences or to speaking sentences, right? So that's a good way, because when you have your own bunch of words that you use daily, you already know how to use them. You just need to probably do small changes, but it's gonna be pretty much the same. Once you do, or once you have that, yeah, you can start learning more and more vocabulary, more verbs, or whatever you want to learn. But yeah, that's an approach that I would recommend.
Interesting. I obviously I've seen the whole learning words in bunches and stuff. I never heard of specifically putting a number to it, but I guess it's just a good way of making a clear goal.
Yeah, it's just an example. 1,000 words is just they just use 1,000, but
Yeah,
it could be
sounds good.
it could be 200, 300. That's your vocabulary.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter. You just need to understand which are the words that you use daily and try to learn them in the new language you want to learn.
Yeah, it's about the high frequency words that you were saying, what you would use in your native language. You're not going to use every single word of your native language every day. You need to identify which ones you need, and then you learn those within the, correct part of the sentence. What's a verb, what's a noun, what's an adjective, and then you start learning those and build up from there so that you can make sentences, ideas, and construct them.
Exactly. And if you want to learn a language just to communicate with people, that's already like 40% of the
Yeah,
work.
it's
If you want to use a more scientific thing, we can say that's the 20 of the 80, using the Pareto thing, right? So it's the
yeah.
20 most important part, the 20% most important part of the language. It's pretty useful.
For sure. It's a very business perspective into language learning, which is a very cool way of connecting the two worlds that you live in, the two things that you do. It's a good connection. The what is it called? Pareto principle? I've heard of it. I haven't looked into it very much, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well that's a very good point, and some good advice you're giving us on how to learn a language and speed up the process. A question of something you said that I found quite interesting, and I feel like you have a very particular... oh, by the way, you didn't tell us, but I'm just going to say it. So Chinese, you speak Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, right?
Did you
Oh,
ever
sorry.
learn-
Yeah. I spent a few years in China, in mainland China. So yeah, I learned 普通话 or standard Mandarin
Mm-hmm.
from mainland China.
From mainland China, right. You said, when we were talking about fluency and understanding and communication, you made a very interesting comment. You said that it also depends on on which generation you're talking to, whether or not you're able to understand them. And this is something that I've seen a little bit, I've experienced firsthand a little bit. in Costa Rica because I have an older sister and a younger sister, and I'm the one in the middle. But for you, I feel like you've had an even better look into it because we both lived in China for a long time. I was there for 7 years. You were there for 6 years. Then you went back to Costa Rica. You lived there for 3 years or more?
Almost 4 years, yeah.
Almost 4 years. So you went back to Costa Rica and then now you're back in Canada. So I want to talk about that time that you went back to Costa Rica. When you went back, was there a lot of new Spanish that you didn't know? A lot of new things that you had to learn? How was that experience? Did you feel weird speaking Spanish again?
Let
All
me
the time?
think. There's probably words, yeah, that I
Mhm.
didn't recognize. But there are these kind of words that are like attached to culture, and then they might change depending on the generation you're talking to.
Mhm.
Since I like a millennial,
Okay.
well, I of course don't fully understand the language that Gen Zs are using in Costa Rica these days. Now, like right now,
Mhm.
some of them sometimes I'm like, what does that mean? Some of them are pretty straightforward, and then I get them like after a while. But some of them I have to go to the Urban Dictionary. I'm just kidding, but yeah, it's kind of like that. And we could say that's not Spanish, but somehow it's Spanish because Spanish is a language that is alive, changing, and in each area it's different, or it might change from country to country or even region to region. So yeah, there are definitely some of them. Don't ask me which, because
They're not
I'm not a pro, and as I said, we're in different generations. But yeah, there are a
no.
few. There are a few.
Okay. How was the experience of, because these I haven't had, only when I go to visit my family, but I always visit for short periods of time. But do you feel weird switching back to speaking Spanish all the time whenever you're back in Costa Rica?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Because in China we used to speak a lot of English or Chinese at the end of the. Well, in the first years we of course spoke more English, but
No.
when the time was passing, we slowly were switching to Chinese, and then you start to get not into the language but into the culture, right? And then if you suddenly switch to another language with another culture that you're not like right now used to, even though it's my home country, it definitely feels weird. Weird. I actually realized that now all the people are also changing their I don't know, their Spanish, if I could say it like that. They're using words that I wasn't really aware, maybe.
Okay.
It might be something that when you leave your country for a long time and then you go back, you start seeing different things, It might be related to the cultural shock or the reverse cultural
Uh-huh.
shock. But yeah, I started realizing more things about language because I'm also interested in languages. So yeah, you tend to analyze what's different, what has changed and stuff. So definitely. Yeah, but overall you get used to after a while.
Yeah. It's like warming up an old car. You have to give it a moment, but
Well,
Fine.
that's my perspective, right? It might be different for some other people.
Yeah, no,
Maybe for you, because you've been away from Costa Rica for a really long time, more than 10 years, right?
yeah. Well, let's see. 11 years. 11 years because I left in 2012. So it's been 11 years, and it's always been in an environment where I don't get to speak Spanish. The only Spanish I get to speak, well, when we were in China, we could speak in Spanish, but it was literally just us. And whenever we were around other people, we had to switch to English or to Chinese. And then here in England, since I moved to England, I noticed that it's even less. I speak less Spanish, which, like, for me, it was like, okay, in China, speaking very little Spanish makes sense. China, very far from Latin America, it makes sense to me. But then when I moved to England, I thought, okay, this is in Europe, closer to Spain, closer to, I should speak more Spanish. But no, it's the opposite, because I don't have a lot of friends here who speak Spanish. The few friends that I have here live in another city or live very far. So I only speak the Spanish that I teach to my students, which is obviously a different level of Spanish. So I don't get to speak my native Spanish on a day-to-day basis.
Well, that's also different, because I was going to say that now that I'm living in Canada, I actually do live in Toronto, or as Torontonians will say, Toronto. But Toronto, it's a really multicultural city, so you get to see people from all over the world. So I get to, for example, at my job, speak. I could speak Chinese the whole day if I with my coworkers, for example. And in the streets, for example, I will speak English if I'm gonna go to the supermarket or to a restaurant or hang out with someone. I will probably speak English. And then I made a decision to live with Latin American people, so I can speak Spanish sometimes. And I was looking for a balance.
That's good.
But although that's not the Spanish that we speak in Costa Rica, we have to kind of adjust to communicate with all the other Spanish speakers. It's not that it's a huge deal, but let's get a little bit technical. In Costa Rica, we use ustedeo as a really informal, chill way to speak.
Yeah.
And in the rest of the countries, as I understand, usted is formal, right? So yeah, when I'm with other people that are not from Costa Rica, I have to switch to tú and start start to I don't know how to say that. To use tutear, right? Also, I need to leave away all my slang from Costa Rica and use pretty standard Spanish. And the other thing is that our R sometimes, in Costa Rica, we have a different R. We don't roll the R. So, I also do roll the R sometimes when I'm feeling it.
Depends on the mood, whether or not you switch it on.
Depends on the mood, yeah. If I'm not in the mood, they have to understand my Costa Rica. If I'm in the mood, I'll be Costa Rica, right?
That's really funny. That's for me. Yeah, going back to that, like I don't know why, but when I go back to Costa Rica, I don't feel like it's been that long. Like obviously it does take me a bit of time to get back on it. Like it takes me a few hours, maybe a day or two to feel comfortable again. But after a few days, then I'm like, okay, cool. And it's fine. I can keep going. Maybe because I do watch videos and TV in Spanish from time to time. I read in Spanish sometimes. I don't get to practice Spanish at home, but because my girlfriend is learning Spanish, we do watch TV in Spanish for her to be able to practice. So then I get to, also have a bit of that in the environment, which is another story we can talk about. But another thing that I wanted to tell you actually about switching to a more standard Spanish, like you said, like you have to do now at your apartment. Has this happened to you? Because this happened to me, I want to say like a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. I have an Italian friend who is fluent in Spanish. So she learned Spanish. She speaks perfectly well. She's fluent in it. And whenever I talk to her, since I met her, we always speak in Spanish unless we're in a group with other people. But the other day, I was at her house. We went to visit her. We were staying at her place. And then she came into the kitchen and I was on the phone with my mom. I was talking with my mom. Obviously, my mom's from Costa Rica. So when I speak with my mom, I speak fully Costa Rican. with my mother. So then after I finished the call, after like a few minutes of being on the phone, she came and she asked me, "Hey, what was that?" My Italian friend asked me. I said, "What do you mean, what was that?" She said, what was that Spanish? I've never heard you speak like that. I've never heard that Spanish that you just spoke. What was going on?" Obviously, she learned Spanish from Spain, from the south of Spain, and she's heard other Latin people before. But I think maybe the other Latin people she met didn't adjust as much as I would. And I don't know why I do it, but I do it a lot. Maybe because I teach. But she was genuinely in shock. She was like, that's a different Spanish. You speak a different Spanish. You've been lying to me all this time. So how much do you adjust? Is it easy? Is it difficult? Do you do it on purpose, or is it just automatic? As soon as you hear Spanish from a different country, you switch. How does that work?
Yeah. Okay. I think there is this natural thing that everyone will do, that when you hear someone that is not native in the language, you will try to adapt and adjust. So you'll try to speak in a really standard, educated, and really clear way. That actually happens to me sometimes when I'm at my job.
Okay.
And then speak to me like "你能听懂吗?" and stuff like that, which is not exactly necessary, but I understand that they do it because, they think that I might not be able to understand. In Spanish, I mostly speak with my roommates right now, so I do adjust, but I think it's just something that I'm used to. They don't really need me to adjust, I think, because they're natives also. But when you're speaking to someone that is not native, it's necessary.
It's
definitely necessary.
It's a different story. Yeah.
Yeah, because there are few things that involve language that I might think that not everyone is aware of, which is pronunciation, accent, intonation. There are a few different things that will how can I say this, like, will affect or influence your language, right?
Yeah.
So you can have a really good pronunciation, for example, but if you have a different accent, some people might not be able to understand you, right? And you can have a really good accent, but you have a bad intonation, or not a bad intonation, but a different intonation, right? I might be wrong, but for example, I think Scottish people have a really different intonation. So for someone who in Latin America who is learning English, and they're like in a basic level, and then they go to watch a movie or a Hollywood movie, and they're I understand that, and then they go and listen to a Scottish person, they will be like,
What's
the
that?
hell is this, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Sorry about the language, but yeah. So yeah, I think there are a few things that might affect your language. In my case, I don't do it, but if I see that I have to with someone that is not a native in the language in Spanish, I will definitely do it. I would definitely do it. Yeah.
That's really nice, because I feel like for a language that is as broadly spoken as Spanish is, and in so many different countries is a native language, it makes it very difficult for people who are learning it, because then it's like, they have to choose which one they're going to learn and which vocabulary they're going to go with. And then as soon as they cross a border, now they don't understand anymore. So I feel like it's very nice that, at least most people I've met who speak Spanish easily understand the need to switch to a more standard version of Spanish for anyone that's learning it, so that they can understand, so that they can, communicate to. And that's a very welcoming thing for us to do, I feel like. When it comes to that, another thing that you talked about earlier, you said about how, because in Costa Rica we use usted, which is basically a formal you we have in Spanish, for anyone that's not fluent in Spanish. We have two forms of Spanish. We have a formal one and an informal one. Usted is more formal, tú is more informal, right? So in Costa Rica, we use usted for either formal or informal. There is no difference. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, we mostly use usted, and some people use vos, but yeah.
Right, yeah. But I noticed this, and I was talking about it with a friend of mine, another friend of mine from Costa Rica, who also is really into languages, and I asked him if he's noticed. And he said he hadn't, but then I told him, and he started looking at it, and he was like, maybe there is something. I would say about 10 years ago, in Costa Rica, it was very clear. Everyone speaks with usted. Few people speak with vos, especially older people, and that's it. There is no in between, nothing else. Then it started changing, and people, when we were in high school, started using tú. I remember my older sister, some of my friends in high school. I didn't get used to it, so I wasn't, but like slowly it started becoming more and more of a thing. And now, when I go back, 10, 11 years later, I go back and I listen to my mom or my sisters who used to speak always with usted. Now they speak in a mix of tú, usted, vos, and they're conjugating the verbs in the same sentence. They begin the sentence with usted and they end the sentence with tú. And it's an absolute mayhem of switching between. And I find that super cool because I think it's like a transition period of while in Costa Rica, we as a society decide which one we're going to use, we're using all of them. Did you notice that?
Hopefully not. I will say hopefully it's not a transition. Hopefully it's just a thing.
Do you prefer to keep the old one, or what do you prefer?
I prefer usted because it's just like our way to speak.
It's like an identity.
It's kind of an identity of Costa Rican people. That
Okay.
and the R is also pretty different from the rest of the region. So I would say the R and the use of usted, it's something that I would like us to keep, but if it changes, it changes. I mean, what can we do? But
Yeah.
I will say that's because of the influence of content, television, social media, because historically we're a small country, so we don't have our own entertainment. But historically we have consumed other countries' entertainment. Back in the day, we used to consume more like Venezuelan in the 80s, 90s, Argentinian, sorry. Then Colombian novelas and Mexican, right? Especially Mexican now. But now it's just not the TV. We also have social media, and there are these influencers. Sorry about that. Yeah. So yeah, we don't have just the TV, right? Influence. We also have influencers, and a lot of them that are from Mexico, because Mexico is like the biggest industry or entertainment industry in Latin America. So it's natural that people will start copying their style, their way of speaking, their choice of words and everything. Yeah. And I would say is that. I would say, or it's part of it is that.
I think so, yeah, for sure. I would say that I also noticed the correlation between when we started watching, as a country, when we started consuming a lot more of this different Latin American countries' entertainment became more of a common day-to-day household. Everyone will watch it. I watch it with my mom. I would watch it with my sisters and with my dad. And we would all watch it together. And yeah, the vocabulary that they use, the words, the structures, even the fact that we started switching to tú instead of usted, a lot of influence from entertainment. Funnily enough, though, now that you say influences, that's something that I never thought about until probably 2 days ago when you sent me, I don't remember what it was. I think it was a news article. It wasn't really a news article. It was a TikTok from a Costa Rican girl on TikTok talking about the news, but she was from Costa Rica and she sounded very, very unapologetically Costa Rican, very clearly Costa Rican. And I was like, whoa, I realized how not used to hearing Costa Rican Spanish on a screen I am. Like, I'm not used to hearing just normal Costa Rican on a screen.
It's not normal. Yeah, because we are not, how can I say this? We are not trendsetters. We had followers.
Yeah, we follow. Yeah, I mean, there's what, like 5 million of us? There's not enough of us for that. But maybe these new times, like you say, maybe the era of influencers means that now we'll consume a few or a little bit more mixed in with the international, a bit more national, and that's gonna, reinforce the local culture, which is language and culture, always hand in hand. That's really cool. Okay. Well, that's been really interesting. That's been fascinating. So let's see, just to start wrapping things up, because I've taken already a lot of your time. But so you're working in, you're learning French. You're working on your French, and you're trying to. That's really good. I mean, I'm definitely farther behind with my Polish than you are with your French. That's for sure. Which is a shame because I started Polish before you started French, and definitely your French is already better.
There are a lot of difference there. Polish is way harder first. Also, French is it has the same root as Spanish, right? It comes from Latin, so I have some advantage. So yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna pretend like that's the reason why I don't speak Polish. Yeah, it's because it's not from the same. Yeah, no, it's some of it is, yes, for sure, but I'm just not very good at consistency, which is another one of the main reasons I'm doing all of this. Oh yeah, it definitely is. I'll have to take your advice and my advice and everyone's advice and use Duolingo and try to stay more consistent.
Consistency is something that if everyone has it, I mean, if everyone will have it, we wouldn't be like this.
Yeah.
It's something that is hard to achieve, to be honest. I think, yeah.
I agree. I think it's very against human nature to be consistent.
It's against human nature, I think, because we are more used to chill out, I'll say.
Chilling, yeah, novelty. I mean, the brain is designed to make things easier and lazy. So, yeah, consistency is hard and it's not natural, but it's necessary.
Yeah, exactly. I actually heard that we naturally, or our brains naturally, tend to take like main tasks and convert them into second tasks. And actually, there is a part of your brain that I don't remember the name that is in charge of that.
The hippocampus?
It's out of topic maybe, but like driving.
Yeah.
When you are learning how to drive, it's a really, really, like, how can I say this? Like, effort-consuming tasks.
Okay.
Right? Because you need to be really focused. You need to focus on your feet with your pedals, or we need to focus on the steering wheel with your hands, and what's going on outside, what's going on inside, what's your speed, when you're gonna slow down, blah 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 blah. So it's a really effort-consuming task.
Yeah.
So our brains tend to, when you're driving after a long time, you don't think about driving.
Mm-hmm.
When you are parking, you don't really think about parking. It's something that you do automatically. That's the reason, or the reason for that is that our brains try to take these really hard tasks and convert them into an automatic task.
Ah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But that's the thing.
Yeah. That's really interesting. That's really cool because it ties in with neuroscience, which is something that I've always been fascinated by, the neuroscience of learning languages. I was reading a book about it, topic for another day, but yeah, very, very good point that we need to do it consistently for a long time so that that part of the brain, which I'm also not sure, I think maybe it's the hippocampus, but I'm not sure, will take it and turn it into an automatic thing that you do. But yeah.
Relating that to languages and going back to topic, I will say that a good way to stay consistent is Duolingo, as I said.
Yeah.
Why? Because there's actually a lot of budget and a lot of work put into that application, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
And they are actually updating the app. This is not this is not an ad. They are definitely not paying me. Yeah, it's not a sponsor. They are not paying me for this. But I like being honest, and I'm trying to give a good recommendation. They're working a lot on changing the lessons and staying and actually giving you fresh content or lessons every other day. I don't know their schedule, but they tend to update the app, and the exercises that are in the lessons that are in the app are actually really helpful, and they think about like every or each specific area of language learning. So yeah, you have a lot of content that is useful, and you have it on hands, and you can do it every day, and it's free, and it's also like a like a contest. So you have to play with other people to see who is on top, blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
it's engaging.
It is engaging. Definitely, that's the word that describes Duolingo very well.
It has a good engagement. I think that's the right way to say it. But yeah, they do good on that. Yeah,
They do. I think
a
so.
lot of people. Actually, I'm about to reach a year of daily using.
Really? Congrats.
Woo.
I'm like in 300. Yeah, I'm in like 350. Let me see. Let me check it. Let me check.
Show off, show off.
Yeah. I'm gonna show off. I never showed this to anyone, but yeah, that's nothing actually compared to other people. But yeah, yes, you see.
Let's take a look at 354. Respect for that. 100%.
So yeah, that's my French for now. And in my case, I also sometimes use other apps, such as this one that I'm gonna show. Just one sec.
Mhm.
It's called Busu.
Busu.
Yeah, it's really. I don't know if they're in other languages,
Now we got an ad.
but yeah, it's actually similar to Duolingo.
Mhm.
But the good thing I find in this app is that in Duolingo, most of the recordings or the voice recordings are like, I think are automatic generated or AI generated. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit different to actually speaking to someone.
Yeah, they sound a
But
little
in
mechanic.
here is yeah, it sounds mechanic, but in here it's actual people. So the
Ah.
recordings are closer to what you're gonna hear when you're speaking to someone.
Oh, that's really cool.
And their approach for the lessons, it's a little bit different. So you can use both, I will say. That works a lot. And I also use this app, which is TV Song Mon,
Hey.
which in wait. Uh,
Uh-huh.
it's an app from the what is this? It's a TV channel
Okay.
called TV Song Monde in French, which is like TV5. Monde is like word.
Okay.
So yeah, and they also have lessons because they're really, I don't know why, but they're really interesting people learning French. So they have A1, A2,
Ah,
B1, B2, and then you can get a free evaluation and stuff, and they have like really nice recordings.
Écoutez l'extrait sonore et les 4 propositions. Choisissez la bonne réponse. Bonsoir, vous allez bien?
That's really cool. So you can test yourself.
You can test yourself from time to time, and you can also review lessons. This is actually a test to see what's your level. That's how I actually realized that I'm in B1. I don't know if that's really accurate, maybe not.
gives you an
But,
idea.
yeah, at least it gives me an idea where I'm at right now. Yeah, so those apps I think are useful. And if I can give an advice to someone to learn a language, it will be learn every form of the past.
Okay.
Yeah,
Any particular
because it's
reason?
usually the most complicated part, right? Because
Yeah.
when we're speaking about things that are already past, you can be like talking about something that it already started before and you haven't finished, for example.
Yeah.
Or you can talk about something that you already done and it's finished. And there are a lot of things that you can say from the past. So yeah, if you are able to you know to master all the past grammar,
Sentences.
sentences, right? I think you'll be already ahead a lot of people, right?
That's very
From my perspective, actually, I'm not a teacher, I'm not professional, but I have helped people learning languages, and I realized that most of them in English, for example, they most of the time they have troubles with the usage of the past,
yeah.
like past tense, past perfect, participle, everything, blah 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 blah, and the use of regular and irregular verbs in English, right?
Right. Yeah, but no, definitely with the past, I've noticed that as well. With any student I've had, it's always like that. Their present tenses fine. Their future could use some work, but they can speak, and it's always the past that. Yeah, definitely. So that's an interesting way of putting it. I start from the past.
Yeah, maybe for people who are beginners in English, the problem is that the have verb is too how can I explain this? Is too extravagant, because have does mean like to do something, but it also represents in Spanish the he hecho, or ha hecho. Or, for example, I have done, yo he hecho. That in Spanish, it's a little bit hard to explain, especially for Latin American people, because in Latin America, I think that we don't use that form usually. That's something that Spanish people will use more, but we usually go for like, instead of saying yo he hecho, I have done, we will say yo hice.
Right.
It's the same.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I see what you're saying. I see what you mean. Yeah,
So explaining
I
it
think it
in
makes sense.
English, which is important, it's a little bit hard because they don't even use it in their own language.
Yeah. So it's something that even though we have it and even though it does translate, we don't use it, so we're not used to it. So the concept is what's the struggle to really understand. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That's a very good point.
Yeah. I think if you explain that to someone which is learning the language, you're already few steps forward.
Yeah, giving them a good head start. That's a very good one. I'll be advising that to any of my students and anyone listening.
Hopefully it does work.
Hopefully it does. I'll test it on myself because that's another reason. I guess one of the main reasons I'm doing these is to share with everyone what everybody that I invite to hear has to say about how to learn a language, but also for myself. I'm trying out here. I'm learning and teaching at the same time. So I'll try it with myself with Polish. Let's see. Maybe I should learn. You know what? This is actually something that I just thought. The point you make of learn the past. If you learn to speak in the past, it means you'll always be able to tell a story, which means you'll always be able to participate in a conversation. And now you feel more a part of the language, more a part of the culture, and you're able to practice more. I'm going to definitely have to use this for myself.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think when you are talking with people, most of the time you're talking about things that have happened.
Yeah.
Of course, you will talk about things that are currently going on.
Yeah.
But it's not the biggest part of the conversation. And you will also talk about things that are going to happen. But most of the time you are talking about things that already happened. So yeah, it helps a lot with fluency.
True. Yeah. Very good point. Okay. Well, do you have any last comments of wisdom you want to give us?
Well, not really. I think just said go step by step, try to be consistent, use apps if you can go to formal classes, go, but don't just think that because you are in a weekly class you're gonna be fluent. That's not the case. In languages, it's all about consistency. It doesn't matter if you are learning by yourself or with someone else. What actually matters that in that case is if you are able to learn by yourself or you need the help of someone else. But it doesn't. You can be learning by yourself or with someone else. If there's no consistency, you probably won't be able to be fluent. So
Yep.
that's that. And well, keep it up with the with the work and try to learn as many languages as you can. It's actually beautiful to be able to speak with someone that you never thought you could be able to link up and exchange perspectives, life experiences, and all these things that you are able to do when you can reach out to a different culture by speaking their language.
True. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming to the podcast, joining us from your room all the way in
more than happy, joining from Toronto. And well, hopefully we can have another conversation.
Yeah, you'll come back on season 2. Season 2, episode 1, the return.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, cool. Then let's end it here. Thank you.